Hey guys, welcome to Ben Wrenchin. My name is Ben, and today I'm wrenching on my 1994 Chevy K1500. Today I'm going to be changing out the alternator. I got a new alternator on rockauto.com. They don't sponsor me. I'm not affiliated with them at all. I just like getting my parts from them when I can. And one of the reasons why is because this is a brand new alternator from AC Delco. So I could get this same alternator on Amazon, and they may ship it to you in a plastic bag. It's not going to be in the original box with the original part number. So I definitely recommend Rock Auto if you guys are getting parts. So first I'm going to show how I know that my alternator is bad. One of the first things I did was test my battery. I've got this cheap battery tester that I got on Amazon. I'll link this in the description. I don't know that it's the best one. I have another video where I show how to use this to test your battery. And when I did that video, my battery actually tested poor. So I went and bought a new battery, and when I went to switch this one out, I went ahead and tested it again just to be sure, and it actually tests good. Everything looks real good. So it's supposed to be 600 CCA. Those are cold cranking amps, and it's testing at 582, which is good. It's got 12.43 volts on the test, which is also good. Not really sure what that number means. Somebody can let me know in the comments if they know more about batteries than I do. Strength of charge at 71, I can charge it and get that up to 98. And then the state of health is 94%. So all of those tests indicate that this is a good battery. And once you know you have a good battery, you can take your car or your truck to AutoZone and they will test your alternator for free. So that's what I did, and they determined that my alternator was weak at best. And so I'm going to take the battery back that I bought, since this one's good, and I am going to switch out the alternator. I'm using an AC Delco, which is an OEM alternator, meaning that that is what was originally in the truck. So it's going to match exactly to this one that's in here, as long as this is the original, or if they replaced it with an AC Delco. What we're going to need to do is take the belt off. So we'll loosen the tensioner, take the belt off, and then the alternator's just got a few bolts. We'll disconnect the battery first, and then we'll get to it. So let's get started. All right, we'll start by disconnecting the battery. This is an 8mm socket, and I'm just going to take off the negative post. I should also say that AutoZone will test your battery while they test your alternator, so you don't need your own battery tester. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend the one that I used because, like I said, I got mixed results doing two different tests. Now that we've disconnected the battery, we can take the belt off. All we're going to do is loosen the tension on the tensioner pulley. It is in between the compressor and the alternator. I've got a 15mm short socket. Yours may be a 14. I just did another video where I changed out this tensioner pulley, and the new one that I got came with matching bolt heads. So mine's a 15mm. So I'm just going to loosen the tension. I'm using a 15-inch breaker bar, but a bigger one may actually be better for this. But I'll just loosen the tension on the belt and take the belt right off the alternator. With the battery disconnected and the belt loose and taken off of the alternator pulley, I just set it down here. Hopefully I can put it right back on and not have to snake it around all those pulleys. Next thing I'm going to do is take off this electrical connector here. Just got a tab here that you pry up, and then you can pull it right off. You can use a pocket screwdriver to get under that tab if you need to. So you just lift this up and pull it right out. Next, we're going to take off the electrical connection under this boot here. So you can use a pocket screwdriver to get under this boot and just pry it back. And that exposes the nut that we need to get off in order to get this connection off. This is a 10mm nut, and it should come off fairly easily. You gotta be careful not to drop this thing down in the engine. And then you can take the connection off the rest of the way. And just set that aside. Next, we'll take off the two bolts holding on the alternator. There's one in the back here and then one in the front. I'll do the back one first, but they're both 13mm bolts. All right, there's one. There's another one right here. All right, so for whatever reason, this bolt here is a 15mm, and I needed a long socket to reach down in there to get to it. All right, and that one's out. And the last bolt to take off is right here on the front of the alternator. It's also a 13mm, and I'm going to use this short socket for it. So I got that one out. Alright, and with all those free, the alternator should come out. You may need to use a pry bar to get it out if yours is stuck like mine. So I'm just going to stick a pry bar under here, and I'm going to hold on to it as I do this because these are pretty heavy. And there we go. All right, and the alternator's out. So I always like to compare my parts side by side. So that is the old alternator and this is the new one. The new one is part number 888-77233. I will link that in the description. And looking at these, they look exactly the same. So the bolt holes are in the same place. They look the same size, same number of fins on the fan. The pulleys look identical. Both have 5 teeth on the pulley. So those look good. And looking at the back, everything looks the same too. So I think we are all good to install this alternator. One thing that I thought was interesting is that it actually doesn't call it an alternator. It calls it a generator, which makes sense because it actually generates power. I thought that was interesting. I'm going to install the new one the same way I took the old one off. So I'm going to slide it in here first. And just rotate it around. I'm going to start with this long bolt that went on this side here. And you can just wiggle the alternator until the bolt goes through the hole. With that bolt lined up, I'm going to go ahead and line up this back bolt here. So I can just wiggle the alternator until this bolt seats into the threads. Next, I'm going to go ahead and put this one in, and it should line up. Got to wiggle the alternator a little bit to get it to start, but that one's good too. And with all the bolts in, they'll thread in a little bit easier now that everything's lined up. So I'll tighten them all down by hand and then crank them down with the socket. I want to start with this one since it feels the tightest. I just want to make sure that this one gets seated properly, and then I'll tighten the other two down. Since I have it, I'm going to go ahead and use my battery-powered ratchet. And I'll do the same with this one back here. And this front bolt as well. Referring to my Haynes repair manual, the alternator mounting bolt is 37 foot-pounds. So I'll go ahead and torque these bolts down. With the mounting bolts tightened down, we can go ahead and put the electrical connection back on. The new alternator came with a new nut, so I'm going to use that one. Just got to move that boot out of the way far enough to be able to get the nut on, and then just spin it on as far as you can by hand, and then tighten it down the rest of the way with the socket. So you want to make sure this is nice and tight and that you don't have that boot pinched in between the connection. And then pay attention to the way that the wire is going. So the wire comes out this way, so I don't want to keep tightening it down until the wire bends too far. So I think leaving it right there is going to be good. And then just make sure the boot covers the connection completely and sits flush on the back of the alternator. Last thing is to plug in this other electrical connector right here. And you can see that the clip goes over this little tab here that lets you know that it's seated properly. And last but not least, we will get the belt back on. So I left everything where it was, so all I need to do is release the tension and then get the belt over the pulley on the alternator. So I'm just going to hold the belt here and release the tension. and get it up over the alternator, and then let go slowly and make sure that it's seated properly inside the grooves there. Now it slipped off this water pump pulley, so I'm relieving the tension and lining everything up the way that it should be, and then slowly letting down. And now I just want to double check and make sure that the belt is on all the pulleys. So the pulleys, like the one on the alternator, that have these ridges on the side, you just want to make sure the belt feels like it's inside those really well. It's got the same on the water pump pulley, the crankshaft pulley on the bottom, and the compressor pulley as well. So you just want to make sure that that feels good, and then check all of the smooth pulleys and make sure that the belt is basically in the center of those. So this fan pulley, the belt sits back a little bit and it's not hanging off the back at all. So that's good. All right, and I think everything looks good. And the last thing is to reconnect the negative battery terminal. All right, and everything looks good. So we've got the new alternator on. Bolts are torqued to spec. We got the belt back on. We checked and made sure that the belt looks like it's routed properly and is on all of the pulleys securely. And we reattached the battery. So we are ready to start the truck and make sure that everything was installed correctly. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start the truck, and I'm gonna be ready to turn it off in case I didn't get that belt on right. First thing I noticed is the voltage looks really good. Everything looks good with the belt. And now the real test is to turn on some accessories. And what do you know? The voltage doesn't drop anymore. That is great. So with every accessory on that I have, the voltage is staying at 14, which is awesome. So that is good news. I have another video where I changed out the belt and the tensioner pulley, and in that video I showed how I'm having voltage issues where as I turned on accessories, the voltage would drop the more accessories I would turn on. That problem is fixed because of my alternator. So if you're having that same issue, you may want to get your alternator tested. Like I said, you can go to AutoZone or O'Reilly, any of those auto parts stores, and they will test it for free. All right, so we are done. We got a new alternator in. That was really easy to do. It was pretty quick, took me about a half hour, and it looks really good, except for the whole engine being painted black. Now the parts that I'm swapping out are not black anymore. So eventually I'm gonna do this AC compressor, I think. So that's not gonna be black anymore soon too. If you wanna see that, make sure you subscribe so you can follow the content that I have on my truck. And now I can return the battery that I bought, so that's the good news. And with that, we are done. And that is how to change out the alternator on your OBS Chevy truck. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.